folks, in this video I'll show you how you can create nice out of the scale non-diatonic chord progressions that just rotating around the circle of fifth with a note grid and some Bitwig magic. Also how to create bass lines for it and some melody lines on top. And I know a lot of people are criticizing this kind of workflow, you know. They think you need to actually paint everything in specifically into the piano roll. I think this way of working is much more fluent. You can save it as a preset, you can start from something and then you can tweak it further down the line and make it more fleshed out to something. But I really like this workflow of having everything dynamic, play around with the keyboard, you know, with the rhythm and also with chord shapes and trying out everything as much as possible. And then when I'm happy with it, I just bounce it down to note clips or audio clips, and then I can tweak it further. So I just like to have this kind of workflow, and I use it a lot actually in a daily basis. So let's start and I'll show you how it works. Okay, so you know, most people don't like the piano roll in Bitwig Studio because it lacks some features, right? It doesn't have the chord shapes of FL Studio, it doesn't have the scales of Ableton Live, yada yada yada. But we have now the note grid, so I show you some tricks with the note grid. Actually, if you paint in a note here, and you have selected maybe here with the right click on the empty note clip, you have selected the pitch class. You probably saw that each of these notes have a different color. And what these colors mean is basically that when you have the same kind of color, these notes are sound harmonic together. And you can see your C3 and F3 have kind of the same color because this is actually a fourth apart, and also G3 here, which is a seventh apart. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, 7 semitones. Okay. So what if we actually scale the keyboard so that each of these notes are close together? So let's say we go for seventh, right? Here are now 7 semitones between them. But I want to have like this note, this 7 semitones note here. So instead of 1 semitone up, I want to go up 7 semitones up each time I increase here the note. So this was the main idea behind this. So I took the note grid, this one here, and I just say, yeah, use here the pitch signal and use multiply, and just multiply everything with 7. So every semitone is times 7. So 1 semitone up is actually 7 semitones up, and 2 semitones up is actually 14 semitones up, and so on. So this gets you instantly nice, interesting patterns. So let's go for this one here, maybe this and that. Don't need that. Don't need that. Maybe a reverb on this, or let's go for super massive. Course, and use a delay here. So let's see how this sounds. So we have now here C3, which is still C3, but this one is not C sharp 3, it's actually G. So I show you this here with the MIDI keyboard or MIDI chord analyzer. So you can see this is C, but this is G. So this is actually here. And this one is D, but it's not that D here, it's basically 1 octave higher. And this is A, 2 octaves higher, right? So you get instantly kind of a fifth melody line. And the problem here is that we are pretty fast up here in the higher octaves. And at some point, right, we are out of the scope of the notes. So Turns out just going up 7 semitones is actually pretty bad at some point because we exceed the range of the keyboard. So we use here my note wrap tool I created in the recent video, which you can rewatch. There's a link in the description probably. And now this one here keeps everything in this octave between C3 and C4. Now this sounds like this. Okay, so this sounds much better in my opinion. Now when we scale this up 20%, and of course you can also go down if you don't want to. So this is not a problem at all. Okay, so now that we have this, we know that each note basically close to another note is instantly harmonic because it's just 7 semitones up, a fifth up, which is pretty nice. We can do now something like, let me see. You can use a MIDI note and say this is a major chord. Now, sounds like this. Or actually make this a bit longer here. And this is all major chords and they sound nice together. It's basically just rotating around the major chords on the circle of fifth, right? It's just rotating just round and round. And what I found interesting is that you can now put this MIDI note here into a layer, Note FX layer, by hitting Ctrl and G, and then right click on this and say convert to Note FX layer. And we call this here maybe major, and do a different, just duplicate this here with Ctrl and D and call this minor. And here we just use a minor chord, of course, okay? And to use the, I don't know, it's a relative or the parallel minor of this major chord, you also need to switch down 3 semitones. I can show you this on the circle of fifth. Is basically when you switch from the major to the minor that is close together, then you go 3 semitones down. Okay, so now that we have this, we put this here into the post FX, and we also put the note wrap into the post FX box here. So we can save this as a preset if you want to. And in front of the note grid, we can now use the channel 16 here, lag to 0, and we use the channel 2 to switch from major to minor. So every note on this thing here, when we select one note and say this is channel 2, this is now a minor chord. Okay, so this is interesting. Yeah, you need to know this. So, and maybe also we use here an arpeggiator with it down in, so. So we can rotate around as far as we want. We can also pitch this down here, the whole thing. And it still stays harmonic. So we just start at a different note, but it's just rotating around the circle of fifth. So we can say, for instance, we are here at, which is this? This is D sharp major. So we can pull this down and say this one here is a minor chord now. Okay, and then we can go down, but here in the minor chords. So So let's see how this sounds. And maybe even more down. And then... maybe switch it back to major at some point, I don't know where. And then we can go back basically to the first note. Maybe we have to spread this a bit more out here in more rhythmically. The rhythm is actually pretty important. Let's see. Kind of a drum loop. Maybe you duplicate here the minor thing and do a suspended out of this. I think it's sus2, right? I'm not sure. And use 3 here, channel 3 to get a suspended. And maybe you can sneak a suspended in here. Could be something, I don't know. Maybe this is also too steep here. Okay, so now that we have here kind of a non-diatonic chord progression that rotates around the circle of fifth, maybe we can bring here some bass in it. And maybe we can say major chord is maybe a 7th chord. And this is also a 7th chord. And this too. And we have a bass. Okay, so I would say this is a okay-ish EDM chord progression. It's maybe not the best one, but you can bounce this out to, yeah, maybe to an instrument track here and say I want to, yeah, tweak this even further. We can do as an input here for this, so we call this maybe chords. And grab here everything not after the arpeggiator, we take everything after the note wrap. Okay, so let's record. Actually from the start. Now that you have basically this here, you can tweak this then even more if you want to sneak in some more notes. But you have something you can start from pretty easily. without actually knowing the circle of fifth and trying out a lot of different combination of chords. You can just rotate here around the circle of fifth and maybe sneak in some minor chords, some suspended chords here and there, some augmented chords. I mean, you can put in all the chord shapes you want in here and switch between them. You have 16 channels you can choose from. And yeah, have fun with this, basically. Doing the rhythm of the arpeggiator from above here. So now we are playing basically chords here. But that's not what we want. We just want to play one note. So we can use a note grid again. Make this monophonic. It's monophonic. Nice. Call this poly to mono device here and feed our note signal through that and select your lowest signal level is used, which is probably the lowest note in our chord progression, or the bottom note, which is the bass note. And we just select this and pass this through here to our device. So now we get only the lowest note of the chord progression here. So we transpose this down 1 octave. And maybe we change here the gate signal a bit, so we use a trigger. Trigger and another trigger. And the clock quantize. You know, the old trick. Some polyrhythms here. Pull this out. So, and this plays now all the time, which is not what we want. We want to, of course, only play when there's a note coming in. No, I want to do it this way. So now when I hit play, yeah, fine. So now we only select here the lowest note from the chords above, and we play a different pattern for the bass line here. Need only monophonic voices. Easy peasy. So maybe we add some kind of melody line to it. So we do the same trick, or not really the same trick. We use actually here polysynth. And the problem that we now have here with the polysynth is that when we want to play a melody, all these chords here are basically non-diatonic. So they go across all the different scales. And we can use this quantize trick, note quantize trick, I'll show you in a minute. So instead of using here a diatonic transposer, I'm using a note grid. And I'm using here a quantizer, note quantizer. And switch this one to use note input here. And select again our chord track here. Instead of the arpeggiator, I'm selecting again here the note rep. Note in, note out. Okay. So now we get the chords here from above, and the pitch quantizer uses the chords to constrain our notes we are inputting from the MIDI keyboard. So now I can play on the keyboard, and the quantizer quantizes the notes to the chords that are currently playing. I have no idea which kind of scale I'm currently playing. I'm just pressing some notes on the keyboard, and then you start record at some point and get some interesting results out of it. And it's non-diatonic, so it's maybe a contrast to using the diatonic transposer all the time and stay diatonic, and yeah, it's maybe sounds a bit too boring over time. But a lot of possibilities, right, at certain points in here. You can see we just have 4 tracks, and it already sounds okay-ish. Maybe record something, huh? Oh, it's this one. And this is what I played here on the keyboard. It's probably completely wrong. But the quantizer here actually looks for the correct chords and the correct notes in the chords. And the more, or at least if you go here up to the chord track and use more notes in one chord shape, you have more possibilities for the melodies, of course, than down here. So I would suggest maybe you start here with add 9 or 7th chords or something like this, right? So add notes in here and you have more possibilities than for the melody. I mean, we could here also sneak in some rhythm elements. So we could do the same like above using triggers here. And the clock quantize. Could be also interesting. Bitwig Notes. So I would say it's an easy starting point for some EDM tracks. Like I said, so sure, in Bitwig Studio we don't have these nice little FL Studio chord shape tools or scale tools, but you can do a lot with the note grid in Bitwig Studio, and even make it more dynamic. You can play around with the keyboard, you can quantize the notes to the correct scale, to the correct chord. You can bring in or sneak in some different rhythm variations. So there's a lot of possibilities, and it stays dynamic and live, and you can tweak everything until you like it and then just record it. That's it. Don't forget to subscribe. Leave a like if you liked the video, ask questions in the comments, and I see you in the next video. Thanks for watching, and bye.